Have you ever tried to run away from something important? Have you ever been asked to do something that you didn't really want to do? Maybe helping someone you don't like, or going somewhere you don't feel comfortable. Well, Jonah tried to run from God and ended up inside a giant whale. Just imagine that, swimming away from your problems and suddenly being swallowed whole by one of the biggest creatures in the ocean. Now think about it. Have you ever wished you could just disappear instead of facing a problem? Maybe it was homework, maybe it was a chore, or maybe it was telling the truth about something. Sometimes, running away feels easier than doing the right thing, but it doesn't usually work out well. Jonah thought he could outsmart God, but God had a very different plan for him. This story isn't just about a whale, it's about learning, listening, and finding courage to do what's right. And you know what? You might discover that it's also a little about you. What happened next? Did Jonah stay inside forever? Did he escape? And what did he learn? Let's find out in today's amazing Bible story. And as we listen, let's see if we can find something in Jonah's story that we can use in our own lives. A long time ago, there lived a man named Jonah. He was a prophet. That means he listened to God and told others what God said. Being a prophet wasn't always easy. Sometimes God's messages were encouraging, but other times they were warnings that people didn't want to hear. One day, God spoke to Jonah and gave him a very clear mission. Jonah, go to the city of Nineveh. The people there are doing wrong things. Tell them to stop and turn back to me. Jonah probably felt a shiver run down his spine when he heard the name Nineveh. This was a city famous for being powerful, but also for being mean and unfair. The people there weren't known for kindness, and they weren't exactly friends of Israel. Jonah's stomach might have tightened at the thought of walking into that place alone. He might have even thought, if I go there, they won't listen. They might even laugh at me. But God's instructions were clear, and Jonah had a choice to make. Now Nineveh was a big, important city, but it was also full of people who were known for being cruel and unkind. Jonah didn't like them. In fact, he thought they didn't deserve God's forgiveness. So instead of obeying, Jonah decided to do the opposite. He packed his bags quickly, looked over his shoulder, and set out to run away from the task God had given him. Jonah headed toward the coast and found a boat going in the complete opposite direction from Nineveh. He climbed aboard, hoping God wouldn't follow him there. But here's something important. You can't run from God. No matter where you go, no matter how far you travel, God knows where you are. As Jonah sailed away, the wind began to pick up. Dark clouds rolled in, the sea grew restless, and before long, a powerful storm shook the boat. The waves rose higher and higher, crashing against the sides. The deck tilted back and forth, making the sailors stumble as they tried to hold on. Rain pelted down like tiny stones, soaking everyone to the bone. The sound of thunder boomed overhead, and flashes of lightning lit up the terrified faces around Jonah. Every creak of the boat made them wonder if it might break apart. The smell of salt and wet wood filled the air, mixing with the panic in everyone's voices. Somewhere deep inside, Jonah knew this wasn't just bad weather. It was a storm with a purpose. The sailors panicked, shouting to one another, sailor voice, "Why is this happening? Everyone pray to your God." Jonah knew exactly why. He stepped forward, rain soaking his clothes, and admitted, "I ran away from the Lord. Throw me into the sea and the storm will stop." The sailors didn't want to do it. They tried rowing harder, but the storm only grew worse. Finally, with heavy hearts, they lifted Jonah and tossed him overboard. Jonah plunged into the cold water, disappearing beneath the waves as the storm began to calm. Just when Jonah thought it was the end, God had a different plan. Out of the deep, dark waters, a shadow moved. Then, swoosh! A giant fish, maybe even a whale, appeared and swallowed Jonah whole. Can you imagine that? One moment you're sinking, the next you're sliding down into the belly of one of the ocean's largest creatures. Inside, it was pitch dark. The walls were wet and slimy. The smell was terrible, like old rotting fish. The water sloshed around with every movement of the giant creature. Jonah could hear deep, rumbling sounds from the whale's stomach. The air was heavy and damp, making it hard to breathe. Every sound inside seemed louder, from the creak of the whale's jaw to the gurgle of its belly. Jonah's heart must have been pounding in his ears as he tried to figure out which way was up. The floor beneath him shifted every time the whale swam, tossing him like a pebble in a bucket. Somewhere in that strange darkness, Jonah realized he wasn't dead. He was alive for a reason. The question was, what reason? And would he have the courage to face it? He stayed there for 3 days and 3 nights. That's a long time to think about what you've done. Jonah had no light, no soft bed, no food except whatever the whale had already swallowed. Can you picture sitting there, rocking back and forth in the darkness, wondering what would happen next? What would you do if you were stuck in a whale for that long? Would you panic? Would you cry? Or would you pray? While inside the whale, Jonah prayed to God. He thought about how he had run away. He remembered the storm, the fear, the moment he hit the water. Jonah realized he had done wrong. In the quiet darkness, his voice echoed softly against the whale's belly. It might have felt strange at first, talking to God from a place so unusual, so impossible. But Jonah understood that no matter where you are, you can still reach him. The stillness inside the whale was almost like a secret room, a place where Jonah could hear his own thoughts clearly for the first time in days. Each word he spoke seemed to hang in the air, as if God was listening closely. Jonah's heart began to feel lighter, even though he was still in the same dark place. Jonah voice, gentle echo effect. Lord, I cried out to you, and you heard me. When I was in trouble, you saved me. I will do what you asked me to do. He told God he was sorry. He promised to obey this time no matter what. Jonah knew that even in the most unlikely place, inside a whale, God was still there. And do you know what? God heard Jonah's prayer. Love. After 3 days, God gave the whale a very unusual command, to spit Jonah out. And with a giant whoosh of water, blah! Jonah was hurled onto dry land. Gasping for air, dripping wet, and smelling like the ocean, Jonah stood up and heard God's voice again. The sun must have felt warm and bright after days in darkness. Sand stuck to Jonah's skin, and the sound of gentle waves replaced the rumbling echo of the whale's belly. He might have stood there for a moment just breathing, taking in the fresh air and open sky. Every grain of sand under his feet must have been a reminder. You're alive because God wants you to finish what you started. The smell of seaweed clung to him, but the weight of guilt was gone. Go to Nineveh. This time Jonah didn't argue. He said, "Yes, Lord," and off he went, traveling across the land until he reached the city. When he arrived, he began walking through the streets, calling out God's warning. Turn away from your bad choices. God wants to forgive you. Amazingly, the people of Nineveh listened. From the king to the poorest villager, everyone stopped what they were doing and turned back to God. They prayed, they fasted, and they promised to live better, and God forgave them.